Hey.
Hi, Kason.
Okay, well, if you're gonna stay in here, you're gonna be quiet. Kason, quiet on set. You can't be making no noise. Hey, Jess.
Sorry.
Hey, Jess.
Hi, Bree.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How's it going?
It's going. It's going. I was just sitting here thinking about how I want a slushie.
Ooh.
I
I
feel like
was think I was thinking that the other day how I haven't had a slushie from Sonic in a long time.
me either. And it sounds really good. I might go get one later.
Where do you usually get them from?
Slushies I get them from Sonic.
Sonic.
Occasionally, I might go to the gas station, but
Mm-hmm.
I usually just go to Sonic. It's the only place I really know with good slushies.
Yeah. Same.
Okay. Have no idea how to segue slushies into the topic, but today we're going to be talking about products of our environment,
Mm-hmm.
which I think we all are.
Yeah, I think so too. So what I was gonna say was that I was having this conversation with
Mm-hmm.
because I was trying to think through products of your environment, right? Because I know that usually when someone is considered a product of their environment,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking that it's as if the environment that you were in played a part or an influence of the decisions that you make,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So, but I was also looking at it as a different way, which we come to the conclusion that I was looking at it the wrong way. Because of what I had brought to her was that can you be a product of your environment if you don't look like that environment? Are you still considered a product of the environment?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
As in if I was raised in poverty
Mm-hmm.
and then okay, say you and I both were raised in poverty, but you grew up and you were no longer in poverty, but I was still in poverty. And then my question was, are we both still products of our environment, or is only the person that now lives in poverty a product of the environment?
That's a good way to look at it. Because I always thought of being a product of your environment is like your environment shaped your mentality and the way
Yeah.
you like operate. But I never thought about the after effects and does that determine are you still a product of your
Right, because I was thinking that okay, originally, before I started thinking through this, I was thinking that we both would be products of our environment.
yeah.
But the way that did I say who I was talking to?
Yeah.
Because I didn't know if I should expose her thought process. But the person I was talking to, they made me come to the conclusion that the person that is not in poverty is not a product of the environment. The person that still is in poverty would be the person that is a product of the environment because they look like the environment that they came from.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I could
So
definitely.
what do you think? What do you think that
Yeah, I
both
didn't
of
even
you
think that deep into it. Lord, Dr. Phil. I was thinking um, like the way you operate, the way you think, your mentality, the way you see life is you being a product of your environment. But I didn't think about necessarily how people will change it.
Mhm.
But I'm thinking about it now. I do feel like if you change it, your environment still played a part in it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking that you still would be considered a product, being that that environment still influenced,
Mm-hmm.
your reasoning and your thinking, but some people don't see it that way. Some would say that you would only be a product if you looked like the environment that you came from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I don't really know. So okay, an example, right? Somebody, because I know you gave the example of being, growing up in poverty and then becoming wealthy.
Mhm.
But when I think about like a mindset, like someone growing up with like a self-righteous mindset, right? And that's because that's what was instilled into them. And then they grow up and they are like more of a humble person. They're not that way anymore. I feel like that influences them to an extent because a lot of times you decide not to do something or to do something based of how you were raised.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I guess if you do different, then you're not a product of your environment. I guess that does make sense.
Yeah. See, we were thinking the same thing
Yeah.
because I was thinking the same as you in a way where your environment just influenced the way that you think, but
Hmm.
not in a way where you're a product if you actually look
Yeah.
like the environment.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a good point because it's kind of like, then what makes you a product of your environment? Is it just you come in one way and then you still come out on the other side the exact same way? There was no
Yeah.
growth, change,
Yeah.
no evolution.
You're the product.
Yeah,
You are the product of the environment.
the environment you grew up in.
No,
So,
I'm not saying one way or the other is I'm not saying one way is right over the other because
mhm.
I don't know,
Yeah,
but I think that people could look at it 2 different ways.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I was just thinking of it, but I do think of it, from Clay from Love Is Blind,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know, in
yeah,
that scenario. I would
yeah.
say that,
He's
how you mentioned he would, like, buy the second way that we talked about it,
yeah,
being in the environment and then coming out the way that your environment was.
right.
I mean, that would be the product.
Yeah, because had he of taken on a different mindset and was the man that was able to commit and get married, have a family, and do right by his wife and his family, then I don't know. Would you call him? He's not a product of his environment then, because your
Some
environment still shaped you either
some
way.
would say that he is it.
I don't know. But talking about him specifically, though, he's definitely a product of his environment because his parents divorced. And for people who don't know, Love is Blind, Clay, I think this is season 6. Um,
Yeah.
his parents were married for like 24 years and they got a divorce because of his dad's infidelity. His dad couldn't stop cheating. And so he went on the show looking for love and wanting to get married because he said that was the goal of his in life is to be married. But his mom actually brought up his childhood trauma, basically, is what it was, and how that
Mhm.
shaped him into who he is now and just being so fearful of marriage. It's like you want it, but you're just scared of yourself in it because of what you grew up seeing.
So then to add to that then, right, with the 2, um, I don't know if these are definitions, but the 2 ways that we're looking at it, technically, if he hasn't, um if I mean, he hasn't been married, and so, I mean, I don't know if his dating history or anything, I don't feel like they talked about it. So, I don't know if they even, like, said that he had a problem with cheating and stuff.
Yeah.
So, he necessarily going off of based off of if he did not have a history of cheating, would he still be a product?
If he didn't,
Yeah.
I feel so. In my opinion, I feel like
Yeah.
be a product
I
because
feel like too.
yeah, because you've seen something that you didn't like and you decided I'm gonna be the opposite. So you're a product of that because that either way your environment's gonna influence you to do the same thing or something different. So I feel like you're still a product of that environment because it shaped the way you do things.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're here. We're here. But I can understand someone's viewpoint of saying you're no longer the product of your environment because you went a different course.
Yeah. But in one way, even if he does or does not, the fact that what his dad did having a effect of him being like or his response in a relationship, I would think that he is a product, right?
Yeah, I would think so because it's like if I grew up in a household that I didn't care for or I didn't like what I saw and I decided like I was determined that I was going to be different, I'm still a product. Okay, maybe we got it wrong because now that I said it out loud, maybe I'm not a product because
Yeah,
I'm different. But okay, so I guess the word that we're looking for is maybe it molded you into the person you are, but you're not necessarily a product
a
of.
product.
Yeah.
A product so the conclusion that we're coming to
Mm-hmm.
is a product of your environment, you look like what you came from.
Yep. Look like what you've been through.
Yes.
It just shows all on you.
Yeah, but your environment can mold you
Mm-hmm.
no matter if you look like it or not.
Right. Right. That's what it is. That's what it is. So I feel so like you had already said, and I agree. Clay is a product of his environment,
Mhm.
which
Yeah.
I guess it would have a negative connotation. I mean, it could be positive because someone could grow up like because sometimes you see like families of doctors and stuff. Like you're a
Mhm.
product of your environment. That's what you grew up seeing, and then you want to be that,
Yeah.
and now you
That
are.
would be yeah, that would be a product in a good way.
Mm-hmm. I think are like well, I guess there's no positives. I was gonna say positive or negatives to being a product of your environment. But well, there is positives, I guess, like the
There's
doctor.
yeah, there's only a positive if it was a positive environment.
Yeah, yeah.
As far as being a product, because nobody wants to be a well, I won't say nobody, but you don't necessarily want to be a product of an environment that wasn't good because that means that you're a reflection of it. If we're looking at being a product as in coming out looking like what you've been through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For people who are products of their environment, a lot of times, which if your environment, you can't help how you grew up. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But a lot of times, I feel like, in my opinion, by a certain age, you should be able to identify that. Like, identify that I'm a product of this, and it's not a good thing, and let me change it. Do you have like grace or sympathy for people who are like 30 years old and still a product of their environment?
I listen, I wouldn't say that I have sympathy.
Yeah.
I might have a little grace
Hmm.
because the Lord has given me so much. But but I do think that sometimes we can use the environments that we come from as an excuse.
Hmm.
And like you said, at some point, at some age, this is not to say that I know that people's circumstances are different and it might be harder for somebody to make a change. Well, actually, I kind of take that back. I thought I wouldn't have sympathy, but I probably would have a little bit of sympathy just because depending on the environment, um, like if I see something that's sad or unfortunate, I'll probably feel a little sorrow. But I don't like release sorrow song prayers. But that comes to a certain extent because I don't like to see people that have that victim mentality, and we talked about that before.
Hmm.
Like we can recognize where we come from and understand that that plays a part in where we are today, but I don't think that that should stop you from wanting better for yourself.
Yeah.
And your better does not have to look like the next person beside you. Your better could be different than someone else's better that may have come from a better situation than you. So they're starting from a different starting point than you, but better is better.
Mm.
And so, no, I think initially I'll feel sorrow, but when someone just like consistently just, oh, because of how I grew up or this happened to me last week, and then, like, no.
Yeah.
I
No,
think at
I agree.
some point, I'm just, like, fed up because
Yeah. I feel
because
the
at
same thing.
some point, you have to decide what do you want and what are you gonna do about it. At some point, you just have to make the decision, like, what is the life that you want for yourself, and we just can't always make the excuse of where we came from is the reason that we're gonna make the choices that we do.
Right. I agree. Because I feel like once you hit like 25, 26, something needs to be different.
Yeah.
Like, I
Mhm.
just can't keep the same mentality that I had as a child because that was the environment that I was in.
Yeah.
In my opinion, being a product of your environment should have some limits to it. You might have to mature and grow as a person mentally, and because I feel like it may take time to identify like, okay, this could be different, or this could be better, or I can work on this, or because I grew up seeing this doesn't mean it's right, or because I grew up
Mhm.
like this, it doesn't make it right. So you have some time to, realize that. And then once you realize that, then that's when the change needs to start. And it can literally be anything. It could be a mindset, it could be a way of living, it could be, for some people, a religious belief. I know, like, even for me, if you think about like the church we grew up in,
Mhm.
like when I got to a point in my walk, because for a long time, I feel like I was stagnant in my walk, and that was just because I was complacent and with where I was, not trying to go deeper. And then once I got to a point where I was going deeper, some of the things that I had learned from church growing up, I'm like, no, that's not, I don't feel like that's okay, or I don't feel like that's what the word is actually saying, or really of God, really.
Mhm.
So I did something different. You know what I'm saying? And I
Yeah.
chose to walk out my faith differently, which
Mhm.
in a way I could have been a product of that environment of the church I grew up in, keeping those beliefs just because.
Mhm. Yeah. It can always I'm just so stuck on it can always be an explanation. Like, the
Mhm.
environment, whatever it is that you're going through, can always be an explanation of why you do the things you do, why you think the way you think, why this may look like this at this point in time in my life, but it cannot be an excuse.
Yeah, you can't be 40 years old and using that
Yeah.
as an excuse, because then it's like, where did you grow?
Mhm.
So Clay got to get it together. He gotta get it together because he's a nice looking dude. So it's like, ain't nobody gonna want you. Not nobody that you would really want.
Yeah, 'cause somebody will.
Yeah, they're not gonna deal with you being like that. So, and I just call him out, but that was our example.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, like, because even when you think about like dating people and somebody doing things a certain way, just because it's like, oh, this is how I was raised, this is how I grew up. So, I'm just a product of that. And
Yeah.
I think it's worse if you can identify it and you don't change.
Yeah. And I think, that's another thing. You say it's worse if you can't identify it because I think sometimes people don't even realize that they are products. Like, their thought process until somebody, like, calls them out.
Yeah, no, seriously, because they think it's normal. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to think what you grew up seeing is normal because it's all you know.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's kinda I mean, it's sad, but it's nice when you do have somebody around you that can call those things out, hopefully gracefully, but
Hopefully. If we go back to the poverty example, like people growing up in poverty, and I do feel like, yeah, you can be low income, but I also do feel like poverty is a mindset. So when you think about, even if someone does become wealthy, they have a job where they're making way more and they're no longer low income, live in poverty, but their mentality is still poverty. Like, I'm
yeah.
still live like, what's his name? And everybody hates Chris, the dad, Julius.
Yeah.
I'm gonna live like Julius, counting every penny. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just gonna be in bondage financially.
Yeah, there's this actress I know she played on the popular show Insecure, and do you know what show that
Mhm.
was?
Mhm.
Okay, Molly's character.
Friend, I don't know her name.
Yeah, okay, so she was saying how, like once she got to a point where she was pretty wealthy and comfortable, she said she was still living in an apartment that was like $700
Mm,
because she was always afraid of like, at any moment it can just be like taken away or whatever.
mhm.
And I just feel like that's another point how you were saying it. You can still have the mindset sometimes and not even necessarily be in it because she was fine. She was well off, but in her mind, she was still like making moves as if she didn't have it and she did.
So then that makes me think you can still be a product of your environment regardless. Because then your mentality didn't change. The only thing that changed was your tax bracket, but you still the mentality is there. You're a product of that environment. You grew up washing plastic cups and spoons, and now you're living
Wait,
wealthy.
why did people do that?
I guess to save money. I don't know,
But does it? I mean, you could just buy.
but if they ain't got the money to buy more, they can't. So they're just saving money. I don't know, but just certain things like that people may do, and then you're still doing it even though you have the money. You just
Mhm.
feel like you have to live so frugal.
Mhm.
So really, you're a product of your environment unless your mindset changes.
Yeah. Yeah. Because her mind still looked like what she
Right.
been through.
So it's the
So
mind.
you don't your situation doesn't necessarily have to look like it, but your mind can.
Yeah. So you're a product of your environment if your mind hasn't changed and evolved.
Mhm.
Because you think back to Clay. If Clay was to get married and be faithful and all of this stuff, but he's still in his mind, because you can even see on the show how he was mentally struggling. Like, can I do this? Am I
Mhm.
stay faithful? Is this marriage gonna work? Like, are you gonna want to still be with me or whatever? I mean, then you're a product of your environment still. Like
Yeah.
you're physically doing it, but mentally you're struggling.
Yeah. We're all products of our environments one way or another,
Right.
good or bad.
Seriously. Because when I think about and I love the church that I grew up in. I'm not trying to talk down on it at all. I'm just using it as
Yeah.
my but like when I think about certain things now being saved that I don't like when I see other Christians do, I'm a
Mhm.
product of my environment because I grew up seeing that. And then once I was untaught and had to unlearn certain things through my own relationship with God, now it's like when I see certain stuff, I'm like, ugh, can't.
I think for me, probably it's just more of like probably the mindset. I'll probably say I'm a product of my environment in the mindset way.
I'm definitely a product of my environment when I think about my childhood. When it comes to the things that I say, I was
Mm.
like, my mom was so big on like words have power, and even having Jayon on Burkis on here when we interviewed him for his book, and that was something that he was really adamant about. I
Yeah.
think that was something that was like drilled into me. So when it comes to like what I say, that's like a big thing for me.
I don't know. I saw this Instagram post the other it was a few weeks ago. But it was like black church mamas or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
it was this guy who's like waking up and his mom was like splashing him with oil or something. And it just or it that he had like yeah, he had like oil on cross on his forehead. And that kind of made me think of my childhood because like I would remember like on like school days waking up and like having oil on my head or like oil on the door or
Mm-hmm.
my mom like praying over us at nighttime. And I guess that would be like to this day, even though I don't have children now, but I feel like that would kind of influence me when I do have children because I mean they might not wake up drenched in oil, but I feel like that would be something that, like I would make sure that I'd want to do because of seeing my mom do it for us. So I guess like in that way, when you were saying how your mom consistently. put in you all your words of power. And I think for me, it would be like the prayer. Cause I just would remember like being a kid and like hear my mom pray in the shower, and I'd be like, "Ooh, Lord, like I want to be able to pray like that one." And I just feel like that has just stuck with me all
Mhm.
throughout like childhood and now being an adult, and so I don't know.
Yeah, I'd definitely be slathering up casing with oil. So I know what you're saying on that.
Oh my gosh, I said that to my brothers, and we were all cracking up about it. And my oldest brother, he was like, "Those prayers are probably why we're still here today."
Yeah, no, for real. I was thinking about that too. It brings me to tears when I think about that though. Like
Mhm.
our parents' prayers carrying us.
Mhm.
Because it's like, wow, you don't even know.
We don't even know.
I don't know. Just looking back and I just think about like thank God we had the parents that we had to cover us and keep us until we got to the point where we could do it for ourselves.
Do it ourselves.
Our relationship. And even now I know like the prayers are still carrying me and the prayers are still coming and they still help.
Mhm.
So it's like
And they still praying.
right. So I think about like, in my opinion, that's a good being a good product of your environment's positive
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
now I have that because I was in a group and we were talking about it was like three of us who grew up in the church and it's funny because it was three of the other ones on the other side that didn't grow up in the church. Um, and so we were talking about our experience with the ones that grew up in the church and how growing up it was like a struggle for us because it was like you were being pulled like the world, God. And then you had like certain struggles that you dealt with or certain like challenges that came. And it reminded me of the scripture where it says, your house will be saved because of you. After Jesus had ministered to that man. And it's like, if God already said that's literally in the word, like your house, generations on generations will be saved because of you,
Mhm.
of course the enemy's gonna attack it. So I just
Yeah.
sad for kids that grow up in Christianity and obviously, God, not God. If the enemy can't get to your parents, he's gonna get to everything around your parents and your kids
Mhm.
thing for real. Like
Yeah.
so that's what the enemy is gonna attack. Is gonna
Yeah.
and that's why it is good to have a prayer life and to make sure your kids are a product of that environment because the enemy's going to fight it so hard.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And if you and then I would also encourage people though that if they did grow up in an environment like that and it turned them off, because I would even go to say that sometimes we even talked about before how you sometimes you have to unlearn things. And I think that sometimes growing up in a Christian household, your parents may have enforced things on you that could not may not have necessarily been biblical truth, but
Hmm.
it was true for them in
Hmm.
that moment. Does that make sense? Like, it wasn't, like, truth, but that is what they believed, so it was their truth.
Yeah.
And I feel like we have to have, like, grace, not for our parents necessarily in that situation. Well, yeah, grace for your parents, but, like, grace for Christianity
Mhm.
because, um that's why it's important for you to know the Lord for yourself,
It is.
because granted, your parents could have done it totally wrong, but the fact that they were Christians, they introduced like, being in the Christian environment, you were introduced to it, and
Mm.
so now it's time for you to learn it for yourself and not just, like, do away with it because you didn't like how it was enforced on
Right.
you growing up. It's like, okay, like, I can understand your reasoning,
Mm.
but it's not an excuse, like we said before.
Yeah. Please. And then you think about God being so strategic. You grew up in a Christian household for a reason,
Mhm.
because not everybody's not. Some people
Yeah.
grow up in a home where there's no religion, or some people grow up in atheist homes or Muslim homes, or whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
Some people grow up in homes where like it's just church on Easter and Christmas, but they still consider themselves Christians. But
Yeah.
living like it, they're not being taught. And so I feel like to grow up in a home like that, I mean, that's nothing but God.
Mhm. Yeah. You just have to go step further, and so now what does being a Christian look like for me as whatever age you are and the point in time you are in life? Because you can't, like that cannot be the excuse of
Hmm.
why you aren't a follower today because of how whatever this decisions your parents made.
Right. Right. You have to read the Bible and get to know Him for yourself.
Mhm.
Because I even think about in was it Zechariah, John's dad, when the angel came to him and was telling him like Elizabeth is pregnant with a baby named John. He's gonna
Mhm.
prepare the way for Jesus, um, and how he told him like he was not going to drink. Like that stood out to
Mhm.
me that like he was not going to drink. But then
Mhm.
also if you keep reading the Bible in different stories, you don't hear them say that to anybody else like, "Oh, you're not going to drink." And so
Yeah.
a thing in Christianity where it's like, "Oh, it's okay to drink," or "It's not okay to drink." But to me, it that just comes right back down to your relationship with
Mhm.
God and what God is telling you to do.
You. Yeah.
So I feel like that's why sometimes people say like Christianity is so loosely interpreted or whatever, or
Mhm.
it's different in every household. But it really depends on people's spirit man and their relationship with God and what God is
Mhm.
telling them. I mean, of course, you follow what the Bible says.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Some things that are just not. Some things are just wisdom. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wisdom.
Mhm. Yeah. That's good. That's good.
You hear him?
How do we overcome being a product of our environment? At first, okay, so I think the first I don't know. I think initially, if you're in a bad environment, because if you're a good environment, it's okay to be a product, right?
Yeah.
But I think it would be to I don't know. I don't honestly, I don't know. I don't really know other than the fact of you see the environment that you're in, you don't like it, and then you have to make a choice that I'm gonna do something different.
Hmm.
And after you make the decision that you're going to do something different, you have to figure out what that is, what has to be done so that you can turn out differently. And I think that also includes, you know, being around people that can encourage you or being around people that aren't where you are, but are where you want to be.
Hmm.
Because sometimes just being around, unless you're around somebody that wants the same thing as you, sometimes being around the people in the environment that you do not want to be in is not going to help you to not be a product of that environment.
Yeah.
So I would say making the choice that you want something different, figuring out what it is that you have to do to make sure that this is not your reality always, and then connecting yourself to people that can help you along the way, I would say, practically speaking.
Yeah. Hmm. Definitely being able to first identify it, like we had said.
Yeah.
You gotta identify it, and once you identify it, it's just making the necessary changes.
Mhm.
But if you don't know how, I mean, there's so many like self-help books on different
Yeah.
wide variety of things, as
Yeah.
like you said, being around a group of people or people who are where you want to be. And I also would say, of course, praying, because like therapy is good. Some people go to therapy to unlearn some things and to
Mhm.
find new ways of doing things or whatever. But definitely praying and asking God to like change your mentality, your mindset,
Mhm.
your desires.
Yeah. Yeah,
Definitely.
that's cool. I saw okay, not everybody believes in therapy, but if you do, I heard it's not Jesus or therapy, it's Jesus and therapy. Okay? Both. You can have both. You don't
Yeah.
have to make the option of one or the other.
Hmm. Yeah. Both was great because then you
Mhm,
have someone who can give you natural tools here on earth,
mhm.
your
Yeah,
therapist. And then
yeah,
God can just work supernatural miracles. So it literally change your heart, change your mind.
yeah. Alright, thank you all so much for tuning into this episode. This will be the final episode of season 1, so stay tuned for season 2 that will be upcoming. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and thank you all so much for the support.
Bye.
Where are you going, sweetie? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well as head on over to our lovely TikTok at Cute Combos and don't forget to follow. See you next time.
Look. What's this? Okay, give me 1 second. There's okay. Me, my, okay. Me, bye. Okay.